at a very high level, the starting will be triggered by the SOW, which is what you call statement of work. I want something done. I want this idea implemented. Or Prince2 calls it project mandate. Agile PM calls it term of reference, TOR, T-O-R. You see, just I want this done. And when that comes in, we then need a project manager that will help answer 4 questions: who, what, why, how. Okay, and our major question in this session is it's all about the how. I think I need to be faster now. How? And the answers to these, we go into a project charter, which is going to be submitted to the senior guys for approval. If they approve it, we then come to planning. And planning is where we're considering the scope of work. This is an IT project here. That's the scope of work. We then calculate how long will it take to get the job done. Okay, so that's the scope of work, that's the requirement, that's how long will it take, how long. So we know the scope of work, we know how long, then we then do how much. And at the end of the day, when we get to implementation, we need a project manager who will start to monitor. Are we working according to our plan? Because we planned it, are we working according to the plan? That's the target planned, and that's the actual, and whether we have variances. And if there are variances, we call that deviation. You then start to control them, or we call them issues. And this is what project managers do all around the world. And when everything is finished, right, we hand over the product to the customer, and then that's it. So we call this project management. No big deal, all right? Now, but generally here, this is what we call waterfall. Now, back to my story about simple project and complicated project. Now, one thing about simple projects and complicated projects, so simple projects and complicated projects, is the fact that we know something about them, right? We know about the problem, we know about the solution, which means we can gather the entire requirement from the start. We do not need to wait. Why? We have done it in the past. We even have the historical plan for the last time we did it. Right, and that's where what we call waterfall can work. So whether waterfall or agile, you see, they fit into PMP and Prince2, because I hear a lot of people out there saying, oh, PMP and Prince2, they are not agile, they are waterfall. That's nonsense, guys. Okay, the truth about the matter is whether waterfall or agile, we still need to clarify the idea. We need to plan the idea, we need to implement it, and we need to close it. So Prince2 or PMP, they are not, so they are not synonymous to agile and waterfall. That's nonsense. So what changes here is just this middle. So if we know a lot about the solution that we want to implement, we just go for waterfall, meaning we do not need to have iterations. We just go big bang once, end to end once, and then the customer will get whatever they ask for at the end, depending on the type of project and the complexity. But let's take that further. Now, what about if we then have complex idea? You remember X equals Y here, and you remember X is approximately Y, but key thing here is we know the problem, we know the solution, we know the means. But in complex, we have X is not equal to Y. You see, we know the problem, but we do not really know the full solution, but we have an idea of the solution. But the problem here is we do not even know how to go from where we are to the end, because the entire road is kind of blocked, or the entire road is kind of foggy. There's fog. We cannot see clearly. See, and because of this not being able to see clearly, that's the means of moving from point A to point B, that is from problem to solution. We then need what we call agile, because we find ourselves in a complex environment. It means we have to probe, and then, that is do, and then sense before we then know what to do next. And that's what we call emergent practices. Now, how does that work? Now, just because of time, back to our project management. Like I said, every project we have a start. That's the clarification, planning, and then implementation. So we start by understanding what problem we are solving, all right? And next, up to what we know, we're gonna start planning a little that we know. All right, though this requirement will be revisited again and again, that is revisit, initiating and planning again and again, that is initiating here and planning. So we're going to be revisiting this several times. But, in waterfall, it looked like this. In waterfall, it looked like this. But in agile, we cannot do this. Why? We don't know everything here. So since we do not know the entire requirement, it's ambiguous. What we then do is we start with what we know. And this a little start is what we call sprint. So sprint one, look at sprint one. Sprint one, we gather a little requirement based on what we know, do a little design, like wireframe or whatever, do a little development, and do a little build and test and develop. And that will be our first iteration, right? That's sprint one. And we're then going to give it to the customer to get their feedback. Do you like it? And if they like it, oh yes, then we can come back and do more, right? That's the second iteration. And we show it to the customer again. Do you like it? Get their feedback. And based on the feedback, we can gather more requirements, all right? And come back again and go for the next. And this continues forever. And this particular project management framework is what we call agile, or some people call it iterative or adaptive. Iterative because we are going back and forth. So it's not one goal, because in waterfall, we know everything. We can easily carry out that idea. But here, we are going iteratively, and two, we are adapting to what we are finding in the marketplace. And we are gathering lessons and learning from experience, which is based on this principle called empiricism. Empiricism is just experimentation, learning from experience, learning by doing, trial by error. So that means we can never develop the entire product once and for all. We're going to be developing our product. We're going to be translating the idea to real life product incrementally. All right. And that's what we call agile. But it's possible to mix them as well. I mean, so we can mix both agile and waterfall. How can we mix that? Now, if I then get involved in a project, let's assume that I want to build a very highly technologized house, technology-led house. The house itself, building the house itself is known, but adding technology to the house is not that known. Let's just assume. You see, so I can use waterfall for the building of the house, but when it comes to automating the house itself, then we're going to use agile. So it means we may not finish the entire automation once. It means people can start living in the house while we're still automating some part of the house itself. You see, so we can use hybrid, absolutely. But the key thing is we apply waterfall, right, which is called predictive, means we can predict a lot. We apply waterfall when we know a lot, and we apply agile when we do not know a lot, because we have high VUCA, we have high volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And that's where agile comes in. So you can see here, there's no closing, okay, because the closing are at the end of the sprint, and whatever lesson we are learning, we are using for the next and for the next. So the closing is not really closed out, because even as we use the product, all right, we keep learning from real life to evolve our product over time and based on what we are learning. So we're going to be learning to see whether things are working the way we intended or not. Now, yes, somebody said because iterating, will not cost more to implement. Now, just to quickly answer your question, Shehu, all right? To quickly answer your question, when somebody says it will cost more, no. You see, what happens in Agile, in fact, let me quickly use this next slide. I'll come back to this. Let me use this next slide to explain that. You see, everything we need in Agile, basically we go into a backlog, okay? This backlog, since we know we can never do everything, all right, what we do is we prioritize and focus on what we need to do right now, okay? And when we prioritize, in order to prove the idea, don't forget that let me go back to that just because of time, so that I can answer your question fully. You see, when you go back to this particular place, you're going to find that the first thing here is probe and sense. Right? Probe and sense. It means that we don't know exactly what to do. And since we do not know exactly what to do, doing too much too early, we amount to that waste of money that you are thinking about. All right. So we then do a little, we then prioritize what we can do to probe. So we prioritize, to probe. We do a little to probe, and if that little goes well, then we can do more. But if it goes wrongly, then we can even stop, Because sometimes we could have spent too much money before we discover that, oh, we should have stopped long time ago. So Agile is even a cost controlling framework that will not allow us to waste money, because we're going to find out very soon, instead of having to go for too long before we then find out that we shouldn't have been spending money on such a thing. You see, so Agile then says, guys, let's have a small sprint. And the sprint, if I go with Scrum, the sprint is between 1 to 2 weeks. All right, 1 to 4 weeks. 1 to 4 weeks, we can quickly see something, whether it's working or not. And if it is not working, then we can then stop. Okay, what type of Agile, what are the types of, I'm going there now. Just because of time, let's just move on. Yes, that's the Agile. Agile is used for managing complex products or complex ideas, and since they are complex and we don't know so much about them, we're going to take them little by little and deliver them incrementally.